I sat frozen in the empty living room of my old condo, my heart pounding as my daughter-in-law's voice cut through the air like a blade. "What have you done? Where's everything?" She screamed, her face twisted with betrayal. My son stood behind her, his eyes dark with a rage I'd never seen before, demanding, "Give us the money." "Mom, you owe us that much." I took a deep breath, steadying myself, and said, "There's something else you need to know. If my story resonates with you, please subscribe to the channel and join me for more stories like this one. My name is Vivian Grace Turner, and I'm 67 years old. Until 6 months ago, I was a ghost in my own life, fading into the background of a world that no longer seemed to need me. I lived in a modest 2-bedroom condo in Seattle, a place my late husband, Robert, and I had bought 28 years ago with every penny we could scrape together. It wasn't much, peeling paint on the walls, a creaky radiator that groaned like an old friend, but it was ours. It was the last piece of him I could still hold on to, the last place where I felt like I belonged. Robert passed away 8 years ago, quietly in his sleep, leaving me with a silence that grew heavier each day. For years, I drifted through a routine that felt more like a sentence. I'd wake at 5:30 a.m., brew coffee in a pot that still carried the faint scent of Robert's favorite blend, and sit by the window, watching the world move on without me. My son Nathan was my only child, my only tether to family. I thought his father's death would bring us closer, that he'd need me as much as I needed him. But Nathan had his own life, his wife, Jessica, his career, his ambitions. I was a footnote, a quick call every few weeks, a grudging visit on Christmas Eve. "Hey, Mom, you doing okay?" He'd ask, his voice distracted, his eyes already on his phone. I'd smile, say I was fine, and he'd nod, already halfway out the door. If you've ever felt invisible, you know how it creeps up on you. At first, I told myself it was normal. Kids grow up and move on. I shouldn't expect more. But loneliness is a slow poison. It seeps into your bones, makes every moment heavier. Nathan's visits were mechanical, his presence a checklist item. Jessica, on the other hand, was a different kind of wound. When Nathan first introduced her, she was all warmth, hugs, compliments, a basket of muffins she'd baked herself. I let myself believe she was the daughter I'd always wanted. I let myself hope, but hope is a fragile thing. Jessica's warmth faded faster than the muffins went stale. Her smiles turned sharp, her eyes calculating. I'd catch her glancing around the condo, lingering on the walls, the furniture, the space itself, like she was measuring its worth. One evening, as I served them dinner, roast chicken, Nathan's childhood favorite, she pushed her plate away and said, "This place is so dated, Vivian. When we get it, we'll gut it. Modernize everything. When we get it." As if my life was just a waiting room for their plans. Nathan didn't correct her. He just nodded, scrolling through his phone. The real fracture came on a rainy Tuesday in March. I was in my bedroom folding laundry when I heard the front door creak open. Nathan and Jessica hadn't called to say they were coming. Their voices drifted through the thin walls. "How much do you think this place could go for?" Jessica asked, her tone sharp with excitement. "Maybe $320,000, Nathan replied. "Enough for a solid down payment on a house in Bellevue." Jessica laughed, a sound that chilled me. "God, I can't wait. But your mom's not going to sell, is she?" Nathan's voice was cold, certain. "She won't need it much longer. When she's gone, it's ours. Only thing I'm counting on." I pressed my hand to my mouth to stifle a sob. The words weren't just a betrayal. They were a death sentence. They didn't see me as a person, just a hurdle to their dreams. I stayed in the bedroom silent until they left. When I emerged, the condo felt different, smaller, colder, like it was already theirs. I sat on the couch, staring at the coffee table where Robert and I used to play cards, and asked myself, when did I become this? A placeholder waiting to disappear? That night something shifted. The grief, the loneliness, the years of swallowing my pain hardened into something else. Resolve. I wasn't going to let my life be a footnote in someone else's story. I wasn't going to wait for my son to decide my worth. The next morning, I pulled out a notebook and wrote down every slight, every cold word, every moment they'd made me feel small. 7 pages later, I had proof I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't crazy. They'd been chipping away at me for years. 2 weeks later, they came back, all smiles and false concern. "Vivian," Jessica said, her voice syrupy, "this condo's too big for you. 2 bedrooms, all this space. It's a lot to manage alone." Nathan chimed in. "We're looking at houses, Mom. We want to start a family, but the market's brutal. If you sold this place, you could get something smaller, and we could use the extra for a down payment." He slid a real estate flyer across the table. A 1-bedroom apartment, $180,000 in a retirement community 40 miles away. "It's cozy," Jessica added. "Perfect for you." I stared at the flyer, my hands steady. "This condo is my home," I said. "It's not for sale." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Mom, don't be difficult. You're not getting younger. You don't need all this space." Jessica's eyes glistened with crocodile tears. "We're just thinking of you, Vivian, and our future kids, your grandkids." The word grandkids was a knife, twisted to guilt me. I smiled tightly. "I'll think about it." They left, satisfied they'd planted the seed, certain I'd cave like always. But I wasn't the same Vivian anymore. That night I lay awake, the weight of their words pressing against the spark of defiance growing inside me. I thought of Robert, how he'd always said, "Viv, you're tougher than you know." I hadn't believed him then, but I was starting to. The next day, I overheard a conversation at the grocery store that changed everything. 2 women, one older, one younger, stood by the produce aisle. "My mom sold her house," the younger one said. "She's traveling now, Europe, Asia. Says she's finally living for herself." The older woman laughed. "Good for her. Why should she wait for permission?" Those words hit me like a lightning bolt. Why was I waiting for permission to live my life? I went home and called a real estate agent. "I want to sell my condo," I said, my voice steady. Quickly, discreetly. The agent, a woman named Karen, asked for details. 200 square feet, 2 bedrooms, built in 1995, fair condition. "I can get you $310,000, maybe $300,000 if you want it fast," she said. "Do it," I replied. She came the next day, took photos, and within a week I had an offer. $305,000 cash from a young family relocating for work. I signed the papers on April 12, 2025 at 2:30 p.m. in a quiet office downtown. The money hit my account 3 days later. I didn't tell Nathan or Jessica. I let them think I was still thinking about it while I searched for a new place. I found a 1-bedroom condo in a quiet neighborhood near Green Lake, $190,000, no mortgage. I bought it outright, moved in with just my clothes, a few books, and Robert's old watch, which still ticked softly on my wrist. The remaining $115,000 went into a savings account, my safety net. The new condo was small but bright, with windows that caught the morning sun. It felt like mine in a way the old place never had. I knew the confrontation was coming. Nathan called daily, his tone growing sharper. "Mom, we need an answer. The house we want is going to someone else." Jessica texted photos of a sprawling suburban home. $650,000 with captions like, "This could be our kids' home." "Vivian," I replied vaguely, buying time, preparing. I printed the sale documents. Contract DUG3924, dated April 12, 2025, $305,000, and kept a voice recorder app running during their visits. I had evidence, their words, their plans, their dismissal of me. The storm broke on a Friday evening, May 16, 2025. Nathan called, his voice tight. "Mom, we're coming over. We're settling this tonight." I drove to the old condo, where the new owners hadn't yet moved in. I sat on the floor, the space echoing with emptiness, and waited. When they arrived, Nathan stormed in, Jessica trailing behind. "What's going on?" he demanded, seeing the bare walls. "Where's everything?" "I sold it," I said, standing slowly. "The condo, the furniture, all of it. 3 weeks ago." Jessica's face crumpled. "You sold our future. How could you do this to us?" Nathan's voice rose to a shout. "Give us the money, Mom. You owe us that much." I held my ground. "There's something else you need to know. The money's gone. I bought a new place, and the rest is for my future. Nathan's eyes blazed. You're my mother. That was my inheritance, my right. Jessica sobbed. We were counting on this, Vivian. We had plans, kids, a home, everything. I looked at them unflinching. This condo was mine. Robert and I paid for it. You don't get to claim it just because I'm your mother. Nathan stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. You're selfish, Mom. You've always been selfish. Selfish. The word stung, but it didn't break me. Selfish, I said, my voice rising. I gave you everything, my time, my love, my patience, and you treated me like a means to an end, like I was already dead. I pulled out my phone, played a clip from their March conversation. She won't need it much longer. It's ours. Their faces paled. You recorded us? Jessica gasped. I had to, I said. To remind myself I wasn't crazy, Nathan's hands shook. You can't do this. I'll sue you. I'll prove you're not in your right mind. I laughed, a sound that surprised even me. Try it, Nathan. The papers are signed, the money's secure, and I've got recordings to prove every word you said. You don't get to bully me anymore. Jessica's tears stopped, her voice turning cold. You'll regret this, Vivian. You'll die alone. I've been alone, I said. Every time you visited and looked through me, every time you planned my death like it was a business deal, I've been alone for years, but now I'm free. They left, the door slamming behind them. I stayed in the empty condo, the silence no longer oppressive but liberating. I'd done it. I'd taken back my life. The weeks that followed were a revelation. I settled into my new condo, hanging curtains the color of dawn, planting herbs on the windowsill. I joined a book club at the local library, where I met Ellen, a 70-year-old widow with a sharp wit and a love for mystery novels. We bonded over coffee, sharing stories of loss and resilience. I started volunteering at a community garden, my hands in the dirt, coaxing life from the earth. Each day felt like a small victory, a step toward a life that was mine. But Nathan and Jessica didn't give up. The text came first, long and bleeding. Vivian, we're sorry. We were desperate, Jessica wrote, attaching a photo of the house they'd lost. Nathan called, his voice softer but still edged with expectation. Mom, let's talk. We can work this out. I didn't respond. I knew their apologies were bait, not remorse. Then came the family pressure. My cousin Diane called on June 10th. Vivian, Nathan's heartbroken. You can't turn your back on family. I cut her off. Family doesn't wait for you to die to claim your life, Diane. One afternoon, as I tended my garden, Ellen sat beside me pulling weeds. You did something brave, she said. Most people don't have the guts to stand up to their kids. Her words sank deep. Brave. I hadn't felt brave, just desperate. But maybe they were the same thing. That evening, I signed up for a photography class, something I'd always wanted to try. The first session was clumsy. My fingers fumbled with the camera, but it was mine, a new piece of me unfolding. The climax came on July 28, 2025. I was at my new condo, editing photos from class, when the doorbell rang. It was Jessica, alone, her face gaunt. Vivian, I need to talk, she said, her voice raw. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She sat on my couch, twisting her hands. Nathan doesn't know I'm here. I'm sorry, truly. We were wrong. We saw your condo as our ticket out, but we never thought about you. I studied her, searching for sincerity. Why now, Jessica? She sighed. Because I'm tired of pretending. I want to be better for myself, not just for Nathan. Her words were a crack in the wall I'd built, but I wasn't ready to let it crumble. I hear you, I said. But trust is earned, not given. Show me you mean it, not with words, but with time. She nodded, tears falling, and left. I didn't know if she'd follow through, but for the first time, I saw a glimpse of something real in her. Months passed. I threw myself into my new life, photography, gardening, book club. Ellen and I took a weekend trip to the Oregon coast, where I snapped photos of waves crashing against cliffs, each shot a testament to my freedom. Nathan called occasionally, his tone cautious, asking about my day without pushing. I answered, keeping my guard up but leaving the door slightly ajar. One call on September 15th stood out. "Mom," he said, "I'm in therapy. I'm starting to see how I hurt you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to be better." I didn't respond with promises. Just, "I'm glad you're trying." Nathan, by October my condo was a home, filled with photos I'd taken, herbs I'd grown, books I'd read. I was no longer the woman who waited by the window. I was Vivian Grace Turner, photographer, gardener, friend. On October 30th, 2025, my photography class held an exhibit. I displayed 3 photos, one of a stormy sea, dark and turbulent, one of a tangled garden, vibrant but chaotic, and one of a sunrise, warm and hopeful. Ellen beamed, handing me a daisy from the community garden. "You found your light, Vivian." As I explained my photos to a visitor, I heard a voice behind me. "Mom?" Nathan stood there holding a single daisy, his face uncertain. "I saw your flyer at the library. I wanted to see your work." I hesitated, then nodded. We walked through the exhibit, and he studied my photos, his eyes lingering on the sunrise. "This is you now, isn't it?" he asked. I nodded. "And the storm, that was me." His voice broke. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm trying to change, not for the money, but because I want to be your son again." I took the daisy, its petals soft against my fingers. "Thank you, Nathan," I said. "But this is just a start. Keep showing me, not with words, but with actions." He nodded, and for the first time in years, his hug felt real. As he left, Ellen squeezed my hand. "You taught him something, Vivian. You taught him respect." A week later, I received a letter from Jessica. "Vivian, Nathan, and I are separating. Not because of you, but because we need to find ourselves. Thank you for showing me that saying no is strength, not selfishness." I folded the letter, feeling neither joy nor sorrow, just peace. They were finding their paths, and I had mine. 1 year after the sale, I sat in my condo, sunlight streaming through the window, a daisy in a vase on the table. I joined a hiking group, taken up watercolor painting, and planned a solo trip to Italy. My life was full, not with noise, but with purpose. Nathan called weekly, small steps towards something new, something honest. I didn't know if we'd ever be close again, but I no longer needed his approval to feel whole. The recordings I kept ensured no one could challenge my choice, giving me peace. That morning, as I sipped coffee, I thought of the daisy Nathan had brought me, its simplicity a mirror of the one Ellen had given me months before. It was a symbol of beginnings, of resilience. I was no longer invisible. I was Vivian, and I was enough. If my story moved you, share your own in the comments. What's a moment when you chose yourself? And if you want to hear more stories like mine, subscribe and stay for the next one. I belong to no one now. I am simply me.